Great Filter is a Phobos Tech podcast. All proceeds go to fund the STEM Theory Research Project. Inspired by the economic systems of both Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek and Ian M. Banks' Culture series, STEM theory aims for a cleaner, healthier future for all of humanity. Go to thegreatfilterpodcast.com to like, rate, subscribe, or follow us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and more. The Great Filter has adopted the No Pass directive. That's no placements, ads, spots, or sponsors. So check out the support link at thegreatfilterpodcast.com and consider becoming a monthly contributor. Options are as low as 99 cents per month. Thank you. Will we be the filtered or the filtrate? This is The Great Filter.
How big is this ship?
There are 24 decks. Almost 700 meters long.
It took me 6 months to scrounge up enough titanium just to build a 4-meter cockpit. How much does this thing cost?
The economics of the future are somewhat different. You see, money doesn't exist in the 24th century.
No money? You mean you don't get paid?
The acquisition of wealth is no longer the driving force in our lives. We work to better ourselves and the rest of humanity.
So that was Sir Patrick Stewart's character, Captain Jean-Luc Picard from Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek The Next Generation, from the Star Trek movie, Star Trek First Contact. The first time I heard this quote, it spoke to me in a way that just kind of, it really has had an incredible influence. You know, I heard this, 20 years ago. And I don't know, I just find it fascinating that Star Trek has influenced and inspired so many technological achievements and advancements, from the computer itself to cellular devices. And I just always thought, what if there was? What if that is how it should be? And a lot of science fiction covers this. The more I started reading hard sci-fi and really, absorbing that material, the more I realized that this is a common science fiction trope, that as a species matures, that money becomes something that's negated, that's something that is no longer a useful tool. So throughout the years, as I began to gather research and learn more about psychology and economics and physics and, just learning more and more about my world, I would just file things away as little relevant pieces of information surface. Just file it away. Until just about 4 years ago, it hit me that there's enough evidence and enough scientific fact and information about how the world works to actually support this idea. So with this episode, well, okay, before we get moving, I want to make a correction from last episode. I think I just got carried away and forgot where I was going. But I began to say something like, there hasn't been a lot of scientific research on this particular topic. And then I started to talk about psychopaths, and kind of made the made the connection without really connecting the idea that there wasn't a lot of scientific research on this, that psychopaths likely cannot self-actualize in the way a normal individual can. So yeah, that's my correction. I didn't mean to flat out say that they cannot. I don't know if they can or not. I can make an educated guess, but that's not the same as knowing. And if psychopaths can self-actualize, there's no evidence to, support the idea that it would be anything close to how a normal human being that does not have issues with emotional processing or frontal lobe damage would. So I guess that was more of a clarification than a correction, but anyway, there you have it. So today we're going to kind of walk through some economics, or some problems with economics, and then we are going to have a thought experiment. Okay, now last episode I gave a few examples, and I made this statement that my most recent estimates show that between 80 and 90% of all work performed and all energy that comes into our social system, socioeconomic system, is wasted. It's completely lost. It does nothing but increases our system's entropy. So even though we kind of covered some of that in the last episode, in this episode we're going to start with clarifying some of that and walking through some of this so you can really get a really good idea of how this is happening, where exactly the energy is going. It's not that the energy just vanishes. That's not the case here. What is happening is that the way our economic system is designed, the way we utilize money, causes a very heavy feedback loop. And I'm going to explain this with a few examples here. So within our system, right, we're all on this planet, and the majority of our energy comes from the sun. In fact, most of our energy, I believe, originates from some sort of solar source. What I mean by that is that most of the energy we have today arrives from the sun to our planet, and we receive it through photosynthesis. Algae and plants, right? They convert the sun's light into energy that animals eat, and then we eat the animals, as well as other plants and certain algae and stuff. So a very large portion of our energy comes from the sun. Now, it's the same sort of thing, only in the case of quote unquote fossil fuels, it has just been stored by the earth through a series of chemical reactions and processes that just stored that energy that we just happen to stumble across later and we can now use. In the case of nuclear power, plutonium, uranium, all of that sort of stuff, those materials come from the remnants of a supernova. So even though it didn't come from our star, it still came from a star somewhere. The only way to get materials that dense, right, with nuclei that dense, is from a supernova explosion. The process of the explosion crushes other elements together so that they form these radioactive elements. So that's where that comes from. So almost everything energy-wise that we deal with on this planet, most of it originates from our sun. Most of it is immediate. Some of it has been stored, like in the case of fossil fuels, but some very little few amounts of the energy that we use still came from a star somewhere, just not ours. Okay, now our economic system has two feedback loops, two very specific feedback loops that are the cause of most of this wasted energy that we've been talking about. And by this I mean that there are two distinct tiers, okay? Two distinct feedback loops, two distinct classifications of energy deviation feeding back into the system, causing energy loss, causing an increase in entropy, and causing us to not be able to fully utilize that energy to our benefit. Okay, first and foremost, tier one. Okay, this is tier one of our two-tier waste system, like the dynamics of how the system wastes energy. Tier one is energy used to uphold the economy's monetary system. It is what energy we use and put into the system in order to just keep the system alive. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of read off some of this stuff to really give you a good idea of how much energy we use just to keep the system afloat. So think of how much energy goes into this. Just follow me and really wrap your mind around what's happening here. So let's start with simple business practices, right? You've got your cash registers and your tellers, and you have your managers that count the money in the back at night, and your accountants that make sure all the figures add up. So every single business has that on some level, right? Every single business, every single element of the economy that interacts with the rest of the economy has some form of keeping tally, whether you're just an individual and you're balancing your checkbooks, or whether you're a business that hires an entire accounting firm to do this for you. Every single thing that interacts with the economy has some sort of way of keeping score, right? Keeping their ledgers. Then, of course, you have the accounting firms themselves, right? You have asset management companies, payment processing companies. You've got payment gateways, right? You've got lending firms and mortgage firms. You've got bills themselves, right? Payments themselves that need to be made. You have traditional banks and credit unions. You have online banking systems. You've got credit institutions, both issuers and processors. You've got credit reporting agencies, debt collection agencies, fraud prevention and fraud detection agencies, financial transfer companies, payment gateway companies, appraisal services, insurance companies, stockbrokers, the stock market, trading, and now with modern technology, artificial intelligence and machine learning, we've got high frequency trading, which is, I mean, if you have listened, I believe it was the very first episode, originally titled AI's Tendency Towards Sociopathy, but I renamed it some time ago to The Machine Uprising, Building AI Sociopaths. So if you want to go back and listen to that, I go through a lot of the whole high frequency trading thing and AI in the financial sector. But anyway, that aside, we've got investors, venture capital firms, private equities, financial planners and advisement agencies, tax preparation companies, companies that build products and provide services specifically for financial related institutions. And now cryptocurrencies, rearing its head and kind of turning into a big thing and really influencing the market. And, that's not even close to a comprehensive, complete list of institutions specifically dedicated to the proper function and health of the financial system. Okay, now these statistics I'm going to link in the episode description, but one from selectusa.gov, Financial Service Industry Statistics, states that the financial markets in the United States are the largest and most liquid in the world. In 2018, finance and insurance represented 7.4%, or $1.5 trillion of U.S. gross domestic product. It being the largest and most liquid in the world is not a good thing. That's what I'm trying to convey here. That's not a good thing. Plus, from datausa.io, they estimate that the financial sector will continue to grow and has been growing at a rate of 1.88% per year. Information also from that site states that the number of people employed by finance and insurance, by the subsector finance and insurance, went from 6.9 million in 2018 to 7.12 million in 2019. Okay, now if you look up the definition of what companies are actually included, within the financial sector, it's not everything I just listed. There are several kind of subcategories and I guess species of financial institutions that don't classify or aren't categorizable as a financial institution, which I found kind of bizarre. But all the same, just recognize that all of that, the sole purpose for all of what we just talked about is just to keep the system functioning. That's it. No other reason at all whatsoever, simply to keep the system running. And even at that, even though that is its sole job, it does a piss poor job at it. The number of, like credit fraud and just any sort of financial fraud, security issues with financial systems, right? A lot of this stuff plays in to just how just incredibly wasteful this is. So I think we've spent enough time on that. Let's move on to the second subcategory of energy deviation and waste. So this is a second level of energy deviation, and it consists of all of the side effects created just by using the system. And you'll see what I mean in a second and how this is different from the first tier or first category of energy deviation systems. So, for instance, last episode we talked about how over 98% of all crime is financially motivated. So, just because of how we use money and, the substructure of our economy, 98% of all crime is committed. So, we're just not talking about crime here, okay? These are the kind of, domino effects of the system. So what happens when somebody, say, breaks into somebody's car and steals their radio? The person has to stop, right? When they find out, they have to call the police. They have to file a police report. The police have to send somebody out to do the investigation. Then, so not only are we talking about, the police resources and the victims' resources and the waste of all of that, the waste of their time and energy, right? We were also talking about the waste of time and energy, or what the victim had to put back into getting a new car stereo, or replacing whatever was vandalized, or whatever the case happens to be. So just take that small little kind of situation and multiply it across 98% of all crime. Now, say the person gets caught, right? He gets thrown in jail and charged for the crimes. So we're talking about court staff, the judge, paying all those people all of their time, all of their energy. Just that one little incident is so costly. Just breaking or just stealing one car stereo accumulates. I haven't sat down to crunch these calculations, right? But it should be pretty obvious. Okay, it's not just, 20 minutes of one person's time. It's several hours of 20 to 30 people's time just because of this one incident. It is not the thief's fault. It is the structure of the system. It is how we have set things up that causes this just mind-bogglingly massive amount of energy loss. What about the political maneuvering and creation of criminal laws and new laws, right? It's just not the 98% of crimes that we would be removing from society if we came up with a new system. We're not talking about just removing 90% of all crimes. We're talking about removing that 98% of financially motivated crimes and all of the domino effects, all of the incredible amounts of wasted time that follows from those crimes because of how things are set up. Okay, we have the development of business-based self-repair mechanisms that exist for the sole purpose of cleaning up the messes of other companies, which are, the messes which are a result from cutting corners and from financial pressures, both legal and illegal attempts to save and make more money. One of the things we did a whole episode on a while back was planned obsolescence. The fact that planned obsolescence exists is directly 100% a fact of using money the way we use money. Just think about the fact that we purposefully create products to just fail after some predetermined amount of time just so we can keep making money. How much waste does that cause? For a fact, I know that if we designed products to last, they would last decades. Like, you would not have to have run to the wherever you got your product from and buy a new one every 18 months because they just break down after 18 months, whatever. I purchased a Bose SoundLink. It completely crapped out about 2 weeks ago. So I got online to see if my warranty was still valid. And it turns out my warranty just killed over, I don't know, I think it was like a month and a half before my SoundLink crapped out. Coincidental, I'm sure, or not, I don't know. But still, come on. Dude, it's a speaker. They could make these things last forever. That's $300 down the drain. What am I going to do? I can send it in to have them repair it for almost as much as I could buy a new one for now. And what a waste. I mean, what an incredible fucking waste of material, energy, technology, just gone. This is what I'm talking about. So one of the kind of self-repair mechanisms for planned obsolescence are repair companies, right? They're literally repair mechanisms for devices that break down, for all sorts of stuff. Warranties, right? Extended warranties. Purchase an extended warranty, but why does that exist? Why did you have to buy an extended warranty from the reseller? Because the manufacturers pooped out on you before you had a chance to do anything. Well, that's partially why those exist. Most of it's because it's a scam, really. I mean, the likelihood that a warranty, that a purchased warranty is going to be worth its weight in salt is very, very unlikely. It is, statistically, it is a waste of money. But people buy them because they are afraid of their shit breaking down, because it fucking sucks, right? Because it happens when it shouldn't. It just should not happen. Anyway, let's move on. So, okay, let's talk about some more of these self-repair mechanisms. So we get a really good sense of what's happening here. We get a really good feel for what exactly I'm talking about. Companies cut corners by polluting. It's better now these days, but it's always been a problem. By polluting, by not double checking what they put into products and what they put into food, by buying the cheaper material, by importing material that is, super cheap, that they don't have to pay a lot for because, it's just cheap to just make cheap shit. And then it turns out that such and such a company just poisoned like half of the 2-year-olds in North Dakota because, they bought some shitty plastic and it had a bunch of nasty stuff in it and a bunch of babies got sick, kind of a thing. It causes this lack of a desire to quality check our work. We've got software companies that don't build their software right because they've got deadlines coming up and there's all this financial pressure building up behind them. So, the bosses come down on the workers and the workers get frustrated. They don't want to lose their job and they say, just release it. The developers know that there's all sorts of problems with it, but they release it because they don't want to get fired or get in trouble. Well, now you've got an entire, a worldwide or a software that's used across the entire planet with just security holes all the way through it. Well, where does that get patched up? Where's the self-repair mechanism there? Well, virus scanners, security audits, people that specialize in running around and doing security testing. There's a lot of these self-repair mechanisms that just should not exist. But because of the financial pressures and because of these crazy things that companies do when they're under financial pressure, well, now we have entirely brand new industries to take care of the fuck-ups that the original companies should have taken care of in the first place. We have companies and organizations that purposefully provide bad science just so they can better sell their product or some motive, like a political an idea, right? A political idea or some personal value of whoever. But the fact is that this happens a lot. And the repercussions of that bad science have echoed throughout cultures at a time. The echoes just reverberate and reverberate and reverberate over, down throughout decades. It is so crazy. And if, you want some examples, the food pyramid, right? The food pyramid is a prime example of bad science published specifically with a political agenda or a financial agenda, right? Cholesterol, right? All the bad science on cholesterol, that it's terrible for you. The echoing effects from that is that we had almost generations, a couple generations of heightened rate of heart failure. The push for sugar, right? The push for sugary foods. Fat, the no fat thing. Now we're realizing we actually do need fat, and that cholesterol is good for us, and that fuck the food pyramid, because it really doesn't tell us anything except for how to sell more bread. A company that has really been in the spotlight for this sort of thing, the past 20, 30, 40 years is Monsanto. They've done all sorts of shit like this. But, it's just not focused on one thing. It is just all over the place. It's all over the fucking place. Think through how much energy is wasted because of that. Okay? We have wasteful advertisement practices. Like, last episode I went through and kind of tried to tally a fairly rough estimate for how much materially, energetically, financially, right? How much waste happens because of snail mail. Just snail mail. Nothing else. Just snail mail. And it's a lot. It's just not a financial hit, It's just not a complete waste of billions of dollars. It's a complete waste of paper. It's litter, It's just dumping shit out into the population for a 1% conversion rate, which is just mind-boggling that anybody would be okay with that. So, we could sit here probably all day just talking about how we are wasting resources, energy, material, how the use of money directly results in wasted energy and resources and manpower and materials. It is not a list that's short. I don't want to waste this entire episode just pouring over this, but there are threads that just weave throughout the entire economic system that if you just pulled on one, it would undo half of the economy. I mean, there's just so many crazy interconnected tier 2 energy deviation systems like this throughout our entire economy. Within companies, this stuff happens. You could go through a company and just watch how they function and work and be able to, just trace out all these crazy, incredibly wasteful practices that aren't going anywhere because we use money. Think about how crazy it is that there are unemployed people that cannot get work simply because other people don't want to pay them. And now, at face value, because we've been, born into the system and it's what we eat, drink, and breathe. But think about this. What's happening? We are telling people that we don't want them to contribute to society. We don't want them to do their part to help out. We don't want them to do work or to help build things or to provide services. That's what we're telling them. We don't want them to do anything because we don't want to pay them. What sense does that make? It's like, say, a football team goes out to play a game, right? And the coach is like, I think I'll only have 3 of you play today because I've only got 15,000 with me today, so I can only pay so many players, and that comes to about 15,000. So the rest of you go home. I don't need you, on the field today. Thanks. What sense would that make? Just because the coach just doesn't happen to have money to pay his players, he's willing to sacrifice an efficient, effective, possibly winning game scenario? That's exactly what we're doing, by the way. There's, like, not a difference here. It is madness, like pure madness that we were doing this shit. Think of it like this. Think of it as if you go to the store to buy a car battery. So you pick up the battery, you take it home, and you decide to, cut it open to see what's going on inside this battery. You're just curious, You're just a curious person, right? So you carefully begin to, cut it open so you don't get acid all over yourself or whatever. And you finally get it kind of all pulled apart and laid out. And you realize that the way this battery works is that inside it has another battery. Okay, it's got this huge brick battery inside it. And the battery inside it is connected to a generator, a motor and a generator, and the motor spins the generator, and the generators, positive and negative, go to the terminals of the big outer case of the battery. So what's happening is you've got a battery inside that spins the generator that powers the terminals to your big battery. What sense is there in that setup? It's nonsense, right? I mean, that would be the dumbest fucking thing you will ever see if it was ever an actual legitimate battery that was sold. So why are we doing that same thing with our economy? Why? You don't need to use most of our energy and resources to run a system just so you can get this tiny few drops of energy out of the spigot on the other end. It's just total nonsense. I mean, from a game theory perspective, it would be like having a football game. It would be like trying to find the Nash equilibrium for a football game, right, where the players themselves were also the referees. How on earth would you even be able to figure that out? It's just absolutely impossible. It's an impossibly nonsensical situation. Yet all the same, conceptually, that is exactly what we are doing economically by using money. At least using money the way that we are using it. So when all is said and done, as I said in part 4, between 80 and 90% of all work performed and energy gathered is totally lost to the entropy of the system. And now hopefully you have a better understanding of why that is, how that works, why that energy just vaporizes. It's not actually vaporizing, it's just getting fed back into the system in these energy expending feedback loops that have no usable output, that have no usable result. It just is waste energy that's just being tossed out. And with the sole purpose of keeping the system itself running, right? And or patching up the deleterious side effects of simply using the system itself. So crazy. Okay, now before we move on, I would like you to just consider something. With all of this fresh in your mind, okay? Hopefully you are starting to really get a mental grasp on the big picture here, on just how insane everything is, how wasteful and just nonsensical this all is, okay? So with all of that in your mind, okay, with everything we just talked about, consider this. Astonishingly, our sun provides so much energy, just this little spotlight on the planet Earth, right? We receive so much energy from the sun that we can literally waste most of it, okay? And still have enough left over to keep our world from total collapse, at least so far, right? We are able to keep just enough people eating and working and reproducing. We're able to educate just enough people that this works well enough to allow for some bare minimum level of scientific progress and technological advancement to the point to where we're just kind of barely progressing, all right? To us, from our perspective, looking at this, we think we're advancing at incredible rates, right? Consider the fact that most of our energy is going right down the drain. How fucking much faster would we be progressing and figuring our shit out if all of our energy, aside from unavoidable waste, right? Like the kind of waste that it doesn't matter how much you optimize a system, you cannot get rid of some waste, right? So imagine if everything is optimized, everybody's happy, everybody's doing what they love to do, everybody's giving back to society. No scientists have any reason to fudge materials. No software engineers have any reason to release shitty software because of a fucking deadline. No financial executive has any reason to cheat a bunch of people or to run away and with, everybody's investments, or purposefully crash the stock market or do inside trading or whatever the fucking case might be, right? Everything's optimized. Everybody's working together, as in everybody that's capable of, because they want to, not because they have to so they can feed their family. The amount of scientific and technological progress that would happen if we got rid of money and did things correctly, as in focusing on the individual self-actualization of each individual in conjunction or coordination with social cohesion and progression, we would have been exploring the galaxy fucking years ago. And you think I'm kidding. I'm not. Okay? Considering between 80 and 90% of all of our energy and efforts is wasted. That means that about 20%, 10 to 20% is not. Okay? Just look at it that way. All of the progress we have done since, progress began in the Industrial Revolution, that has been in the 10 to 20% bracket range. Okay? So, just kind of a rough sort of estimate here. The amount of progress we made from then till here, from the Industrial Revolution till today, okay? Let's give it 20%, right? Let's be generous. Being 20% of what we are capable of doing, okay? That means where we could have been today had we used as close to 100% as possible from that time till today would have been, I don't think it's even an understandable place. We would be 5 times more technologically advanced today than we are. 5 times more technologically advanced. To cut it, to really kind of lay this out simply, okay, the Industrial Revolution started in 1760, right? So let's punch this out really quick, okay? So 2021 minus 1760, that's 261, all right? That's 261 years, okay? So 5 times that by 5, we would be today where we will be in 1,305 years, had we been doing it right from just the Industrial Revolution till today. We would be over 1,000 years more progressed scientifically and technologically than we are today. Let that fucking sink in. Our progress and scientific understanding and technological achievements would amplify by orders of magnitude if we simply just pull our heads out of our asses and fix this fuckery. And let me just emphasize the point that technological and scientific advancement appears to accelerate exponentially, right? Now, given that, when I say orders of magnitude, I mean literal logarithmic orders of magnitude. We would be so far advanced today than what we are right now, it would be stupefying. We would consider the beings living on this earth that we would be today had we started to do things in a more productive, efficient manner in the 1700s, we would consider the beings that we would be gods, without question. We would be so dumbfounded at, what our cognitive capacities would have been, what our technological capacity is, what our scientific knowledge and knowledge of ourselves and of the universe, and just, we would be so stupefied. I don't think we would even be capable of processing the sheer leap in difference. Okay, you ready for some fun? All right, we are going to do a thought experiment. It's a thought experiment I like to call the City Automata. Okay, this is how it goes. Ready? We're going to just, cast our imaginations to the future with the intent of arriving at a point somewhere in the, next 100 years or whatever, where everything that humans currently do for work today is fully automated. Everything that you do as a human to make money and contribute back to society is being handled 100% by AI, by robots, by whatever, by some sort of automated process. Okay, this is a world where you can do whatever you want, right? Everything's cool, everything's fine. The robots are taking care of everything. It's all good. Everybody's having fun and exploring themselves, exploring the universe, or, whatever we are capable of exploring at that point. Maybe exploratory missions to planets further out. So okay, this is the kind of society we're talking about, okay? Everything is done. Nothing that has to be done to fulfill any of your physiological or any of your needs of deficiency. The needs of deficiency, those needs are automatically met, okay? Everything from farming to babysitting to education, teachers educating children, right? All done by sentient AI and androids and robots that can connect and interact with the children in the most productive, efficient manner, right? Everything is just totally automated. Okay, so at what point is money irrelevant here? This is where I'm getting to. At what point is money irrelevant? Let's say we pull back just a little bit to where everything's automated except for teaching. Okay, teachers, they're the only profession that humans still need. Let's say 10 years before the point that we were just talking about. So teachers are the only people that are still around. Well, does that mean that they're the only people that get paid? If you're not a teacher, get the fuck out of here. How does that work? What do we start paying people for? Well, you can't. At that point, it's almost a necessity. You just have to get rid of money. So what is it about this scenario? What is it about this situation that allows for the removal of money, but the continued efficiency of the society? And at first you might think, it's automation, obviously, right? But sift through the scenario carefully, and you may find that it's not automation that allows for the removal of money. The automation simply forced the inefficiencies of the system out. That's what happened. So it's not the automation directly, okay, that allowed for it. It's that the automation naturally forces inefficiencies out of the system. So the answer is that nothing allowed for it. Automation allowed for nothing to happen. It's not automation that allowed for the removal of money in the scenario. We have always been capable of taking the giant currency-driven system offline. We've always been capable of doing this. The complete automation simply forces society to realize this. It simply forces us out of our imaginary wasteful states. So, Yeah, and you can take it further. You can start, if you really want to try to scrutinize it, right? You can try to take it back and wind the clock back. And every single time you try to add something or figure something out, you're just going to come to the same conclusion. It's not, it's not that automation allows for the removal of a currency-driven economy. It's just not. Every single time, I can guarantee it that you will come to the conclusion that it is automation that forces inefficiencies out, one of them being the utterly wasteful utility of driving an economy with currency. So I'm going to wrap everything up and just explain a series of social simulations that I've been working with over the past several years. There's social simulations that play different psychosocial economic systems out. Okay, so some of these have turned out to be extremely large projects. Several are still in the works. Some look at some certain aspects of social dynamics, where others will look at other aspects. And so this is just a really often frustrating project. However, just to kind of lay out a couple of things that have sort of revealed themselves. So one sim was my very first sort of proto-simulation called the STEM Prime Proto-Simulation. Very, very, very creative name, I suppose. It shows that with our current technology, the only thing we need to automate in order to efficiently stabilize in the way I've been talking about, without using money, okay, in a way that everybody has the chance to self-actualize, and in a way that this sort of this opportunity to self-actualize with the proper sort of social and psychological influences, the only things we need to optimize for in order to stabilize a socio-economic sort of system without currency, okay, and make it fair, make it equitable, okay. In order to accomplish this, there are just really two things that need to be optimized. That's it. And the one thing, okay, they are obviously interlocking systems, because there's no way to optimize a system with, two major components without coordinating them, right? So one system to manage physical transportation of both people and resources, okay? In other words, what I'm talking about, when it comes down to, the bare bones here, we're talking about optimizing traffic. I mean, really, okay? We're not talking about forcing people to go places at different times or anything like that. Literally talking about optimizing traffic in a very stripped down sort of sense, okay? There's distribution of materials and resources, what people need. There's people getting to work and stuff. So there's a lot of layers to it, and services and different elements that come into play. But on a very kind of bare bones sort of basic explanation here, we can really just call it traffic, optimizing traffic. And another system to manage each individual's personal and private progress, progress towards self-actualization, progress towards becoming an optimized individual, personally and in their interactions socially. And even at that, okay, it's left in the person's hands. Okay, it's not like you can't force people. Remember, you can't force people to self-actualize. You can't force people to optimize. But what you can do is set up an environment and set up the social dynamics so that they feel compelled to, so that they want to, so that they feel like they want to, become their best self and then give back to society. And it theoretically should not be a very difficult thing. It's private. Nobody's information is leaked to anybody else's because there's no financial motivations to do so. The AI systems that help you set goals and help motivate you, it's almost like a little kind of AI buddy, kind of like Google Assistant, but it's there to help you optimize, remind you of appointments, that sort of thing. Help you get to where you want to be, remind you to, if you need reminding or if you need a little bit of extra encouragement that day, kind of remind you or give you a quote that it's figured out is probably very motivating for you. Okay, this sort of a system. Very basic, It's not energy intensive. It's not something that's going to take just tons of energy to train the AI. The parameters are very basic parameters, at least theoretically. So at least so far, the STEM prime predecessor simulation that we're just talked about, it's the predecessor to a larger set of simulations that are sort of being built piece by piece. They will be the eventual final total simulation set that the study will be conducted on and that the research papers will be written on. Some of these will kind of mix into that, but you don't want to know about all the boring shit. Okay. Anyway, moving on to my latest simulation, which is called STEM Graph. And again, I know, super creative names, but they're just to keep track of, so I have a name to call them and I know what it's about. So STEM Graph was designed with the idea to attempt to discern a social system's equilibrium between collapse and total efficiency. And what this is kind of uncovered, really, is that we are resilient little shits. We really are a resilient species, and had I, thought more about this before I started working on it, I would have probably, designed it a little differently, but that's all part of the, research process. So, but anyway, there is no equilibrium. This is just a graded scale, right? There are certain phase changes that happen, but not related to this. Okay. When we're talking about whether we are going to just collapse, total destruction, no more people, sort of a thing, or on the other end of the scale, total efficiency, excel, become our best collective selves. Okay, this is a graded scale. There are really not too many anomalies in this kind of a system, as it turns out. You could kill off half the population with nuclear war. You could kill off 80% of the population, 90%, and you would still have little tribal societies that would work on trying to survive. So anyway, I thought that was interesting because what it tells us is that it makes the problem much more difficult to diagnose. It makes it much more difficult to discern what the problem is, because it's a gradual sort of thing, right? It doesn't matter. You could lose a doubling of humans every year than what we currently are losing, kind of like what's happening with COVID, right? Not a doubling, but you know what I mean? It's kind of a gradual loss of human lives. And not be able to key in to what the root cause is because it's gradual. The changes are gradual. There's no real association that you can plug in directly to find any sort of equilibrium, to find any sort of equilibrium state or phase or somewhere where it bounces into as a result of using a currency-driven economy that goes against the laws of thermodynamics. I thought there would be, but there's not. But what it does tell us, right? What I just said, it does tell us that it makes a problem difficult to discover. It makes it difficult to detect on that sort of level, which is why it hasn't been something that has just like blatantly been in our faces saying, here I am, here I'm the fucking problem. This is why everything is going screwy. Do you see what I mean? There's no equilibrium as far as that metric goes. So there's no real way to connect the two. Anyway, I just wanted to end with that. I thought those are kind of two of the more interesting pieces of kind of information garnered from what I've been doing. But yeah, let's wrap this up. I really just want to stress that we could be doing so much better. And it's not even kind of better. It's not even like twice as better. It's like unimaginable orders of magnitude better. And it's so frustrating. When you really start dive into this stuff like I have, everything becomes so crazy to watch. Like all the advertisements and $29.99, and it feels like a total dystopian nightmare. Like it's like everybody's sidetracked with this silly nonsense shit. You know, I feel like just watching the different ads and seeing all of the product related stuff and all the crazy shit that happens because of money every single day. Listen to the news. There is always something going on that has been motivated by money that is detrimental to humanity on some level. Always. Every single fucking day. You can't go a day without listening to, you know, some crazy scandal that happened or you know, some, just whatever, something that could have totally been avoided, including the spread of COVID worldwide, a direct result of our desire to focus on money instead of focusing on what is really important, the shit that is naturally behind money, or the shit that should be our natural focuses, but which has been totally hijacked by this imaginary fabrication that we have all decided is real. And, you know, when you start to see it through this kind of fucked up colored glasses, it's I don't know how to describe it. It's like I'm just kind of waiting to wake up. Like I almost can't believe this is real. You know? That's really the only way I can describe it. Because to me, you know, I've been doing this for like 4 years, and I have to check myself. I have to make sure I'm not being biased. I have to, you know, step back and be like, okay, take a breath here. Let's make sure we're understanding what we're seeing here. Let's make sure we fully understand this, because I don't want to produce biased research. I want to make sure that this is real. If it turns out that I'm wrong, so fucking be it. My hypothesis goes down the drain. Null hypothesis wins, whatever. It's cool. It's good research. So I mean, I really am very interested in just the truth, you know? And even with all of my, you know, self-checks and you know, pedaling back to try to get a good overview and make sure I really understand what I'm seeing, sort of a thing. It's just to the point where it's just something I can't unsee anymore. It's to the point where it's just too obvious to me. Like there's too much piled up in the unequivocally true pile of stuff over here that I've been gathering. Like it's not a question. It's the reality of the situation, and that is what hits me sideways sometimes. Like you know, is this real? Is this really real? Like, come on, wake up, buddy, wake up! It is so much. It's such a fucking mind fuck. I don't know how else to explain it, dude. It really feels like I should just kind of be waking up. Like, yeah, there's no way people are really this stupid. But, you know, then it's not that we're stupid. It's that we have just been born into it and been brainwashed into it, that it is nearly impossible to see it. It's like if somebody were to discover that I don't even know what it's like. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble and get a little excited here. So I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you for listening to this series. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you found it informative. I hope you have a shit ton of questions. Feel free to post comments. I really haven't been pushing the YouTube channel. I just kind of post, you know, videos of different episodes that I think are kind of the more interesting episodes. So feel free to shoot me an email or post a question in video comments or whatever. I guess that's it. This long ass episode that turned into 5 episodes. Thanks again for listening. I will see you guys next week with an all new topic, all new episode, entirely new branch of what the fuckness that we will go down and explore together. All right. Be safe and do take care. This is me signing off. In the interest of transparency, the Great Filter Podcast is a Phobos Tech production. All proceeds go to funding the STEM Theory Research Project and other Phobos Tech research endeavors. If you enjoyed this episode, please show your support by sharing, liking, and subscribing. You may also help support our efforts with a small monthly donation. Thanks.